Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
I had a feeling there's going to be a significant impact of this episode on the entire direction of the podcast. So I've been talking about unlocking growth in season five, and I have never clarified, is it B2B? Is it B2C? I think the assumption is it's both. And I've started having conversations with folks saying, hold on, like you're treating these as if they're the same. Daniel, I have a feeling with your incredible experience and your point of view, you may shed some light on this topic. I'm just going to jump straight into it. In your view, when we talk about unlocking growth in 2024, when we are considering B2B and B2C, is it important to pick one? Are they different enough in terms of how we think about marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, thank you for having me on, Adam. And it was great chatting with you last week. And I think this could add incredible value for our audience and even for us because, we enrich our learning just talking to each other and just kind of learn about different perspective in market. So
Indeed.
B2, B2B and B2C, those are two big categories that we generalize things into, right? And there are micro categories of B2B2C. Sometimes it's just pure B2B in different ways. But what I learned, at least over the years of managing both and significant experience in B2B side, is generally consumers have a lot of control when you talk about B2C, right? Just from information gathering to how many layers are in between, but you are in control. If I'm trying to buy a PC or a headphone or whatever that we do all the time, you have a lot of control over the consumption of the information. How do you learn first-hand information? Who do you talk to? Either sales representative at Best Buy or just your own research on YouTube. But there is a lot of first-hand information, and there is direct communication even to the supplier. When it comes to B2B, there is a lot of layers involved depending on which categories you are in, right? So, as an example, if you're building product manufacturing, you probably have your dealer or distributor as a layer in between. You probably also have influencers in a sense of your installer, right? They may prefer one product or other depending on how their experience was in installing the product or just having the product complete, because everything could be perfectly right with the product, but if they didn't get certain parts in shipping and handling, you have a bad experience with installer who could have a lot of influence. Same thing, architect would have a lot of influence in specifying different product one versus other and so forth. So B2B has a tremendous opportunity to unlock by really understanding the key stakeholder in the process while not forgetting that most of the B2B products are also consumed by a consumer like you and I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the main difference that I see between the two and how they are similar but little different in a sense.
And those differences are not subtle. When you think about this communication that's direct versus as you said, there are layers to go through. And these
Mhm.
layers create other variability, such as the sales cycle from the moment someone is exposed to the message until that compelling event and a decision is made. Is that not right, Daniel?
Yeah, so just thinking about how do you break the barrier on some of this, right? How do you go from B2B with your message that may not be heard by everyone you are trying to explain? So in 1991, Intel, I believe, was the first major tech brand to do what we call now is ingredient marketing. While they were trying to explain why their processors are better, to consumer, even though they are just a one little component of a computer, they started talking about Intel Inside, if you remember that campaign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now it's like every day on like my laptop right now here has a little logo called Intel Core i5, right? But when it first started in 91, no one had ever done similar thing to break the barrier of, because they're just B2B OEM vendor, and they became household name by breaking that barrier to say, how do I communicate not the features of the product, right? What the processor strength is and blah, blah, blah. Because you can all day long try to do that through trade journals and different things. They just simply said, if you don't see this Intel inside on your laptop, you may be missing something, right? And as a consumer, a lot of untech people, they don't know all the little jargons of technicality, right? And that worked in a sense. So B2B has an opportunity to break the barrier, even or even explain the message. And it could go on B2C route, even like Apple versus Android, right? Apple never talks about RAM storage because their processing and their capability with iOS being their own system, all the apps are native. They don't need to talk about RAM because they are just so much efficient in a case. So those are the kind of ways we can break between features versus benefit when it comes to B2B and B2C even. But just leapfrogging that conversation to say, hey, let me explain why I am better without telling you a laundry list of features that I need to explain to you.
And that example by Intel, they're a pioneer in the B2B space to take something that has worked very well in the world of B2C, and they proved it, right? They proved
Mhm.
it. They understood that leading indicators and lagging indicators are important to measure, and they began to think as a business to consumer marketer. Now, Daniel, this is going to be my assessment of the B2B versus B2C landscape. I'm curious what you think. In my opinion, B2B is so far behind B2C in terms of the world of on average. There are pioneers, as we said, Intel, but I believe there's a awakening of sorts in the B2B marketing space where the question of what can we learn from B2C, but what will be different because we're in B2B? So, Daniel, how would you assess the current moment in time if you were to think about the B2B leader marketers?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. Simply because there are a lot of constraints that come in place. One of them would be just a broader audience we have to target, right? Your B2B, like we talked about earlier on, the layers between the influencers versus the people who are actually selling your product versus the people who are actually using your product. Most companies have failed to really target and segment their customer base and understand, okay, these are the influencers. There is a different set of marketing criteria that address and work for influencers versus these are my distributors. There's a different set of marketing criteria that work for the distribution set. And these are my actual end users, and how do we provide that support on end user side? So that because of those multiple layers, Adam, you're 100% right. Most time companies end up focusing on their paying customer. So if a dealer or distributor is the one actually paying you to purchase your product to then resell to the end users and what, most companies forget that your product is still being used by someone else who is not necessarily a directly paying customer, but a significant buying power that they hold. And by neglecting who actually is your user versus who is just your paying customer, that creates a significant challenge for a lot of the B2B companies today.
Significant. Let's just go a little deeper into, I don't know if I would call, I probably call this as the Lynch Pin problem in B2B, which is this multi-audience, many segments, which then leads you to think about sales cycles, decision, awareness, even the entire funnels need to be created to ask yourself, if you're a brand, how do you send the right message to the right person based on this specific audience? And the sentiment of these audiences could be drastically different. So Daniel, when you think about one brand, many audiences, how do you think about the size of that problem and its implication for B2B marketers?
Yeah, so I think you have to go back to the basics of the problem statement, right? And what are your clearly defined problem statement before you start solutionizing from your product, to just kind of understand from consumer standpoint what is the real problem we are trying to solve. And what I mean by that is there's always some kind of unmet needs
Hmm.
that the product solves. Even though the product A and product B look maybe similar, there is always some kind of unmet need. That's the reason why you're marketing your product. So once you understand that, then you can kind of start differentiating the gaps that exist in the market and how your product can fill those gaps. And it could be as simple as you're filling a gap with your distribution on faster shipping. At the same time, you're filling a gap with your end user, or you can have this product earlier than what you thought you could have one. Even in B2B, right? Timeline matters. So if the industry norm is say 3 weeks from the order placed to order received and installed, because of all the different steps in come, if you just solve a shipping issue, may not be a product related advantage, Adam, but hey, you just cut down a 1 week because you have a your manufacturing is closer to your end users, or whatever significant impact you have on your last mile coverage or something. Now you can create that unmet need that is significantly impacting both your distribution channel or your perfectly end user who are doing. So, like, there is a way to solve for both of them, and
Hmm.
similar message that you can have that you're addressing the gap. And also, B2B is evolving space. The good thing on in B2B, Adam, versus B2C is there may be a more forgiveness in a sales channel also than B2B, right? If you fail to address the need on a very first time, you might never get the second chance on B2B unless you rebrand or remessage or relaunch, that significant cost involved. B2B, on the other hand, is a little bit more forgiving because you have multiple steps and processes come in place. So what I had used in past that worked significantly for me and my marketing team is like think about PDCA mindset. That's Japanese thought process that talks about plan, do, act, and check. So in any marketing campaign or business processes, you plan through your campaign, you plan through your launch, you plan through different stuff, and when you start doing it, right, at that time you have an opportunity to continue to act a certain way or check if something is working not working, and most likely adjust to those parameters. And B2B will give you a more forgiving landscape because you can adjust. Hey, my lead time is now 2 weeks versus 4 weeks. You can adjust and get improvement in a process as you go through. Or my product, we just added a couple of features on top of the same product because it could be a software update you're pushing through that significantly improves, that is easy to communicate to B2B side versus on the B2C side. So there are some adjustments you can make in your marketing campaign on a B2B that may be more encompassing and also kind of help you streamline your messaging with all different audiences.
Fascinating. Never thought about it this way. B2B is more forgiving landscape than B2C. Yet another difference. Daniel, let's make our way toward the boardroom for a second. Your CMO goes into the boardroom in a B2B organization and talks about the need for marketing, makes the case, if you will. And I have no doubt there's going to be a few board members who say, in our history, we've done fine, right? We've done fine. Why do we need to start marketing now? I actually had a pre-interview for an episode last week where the main theme was the individual said, listen, I was able to make do with 4% of the marketing budget of our total revenue, which is almost half of the industry. And that was something that I think in that case, that organization would celebrate, saying, hey, look at the low expense. Now, I think there are questions strategically. What does that mean in a market? What is the long-term impact of this decision? So Daniel, let's go to the boardroom for a minute. For those who are listening in, B2B, CMOs, leaders of organizations, where do you begin this conversation?
So, in my opinion, marketing is new math. It's no longer just soft, touchy feel, right? When you come to B2B, it's a math data driven organization because of you have a longevity of experiences with your user set. You probably also have a similar customer base that you can go through every year. You bring in new customer, we also have a repeat customer base going through and whatnot. So you have a very good mathematical data driven modeling that can go in place. And what I coined the term in my past few years is, when we talk about marketing and talk about products or talk about services from B2B standpoint, I talk about from PowerPoint to P&L journey, meaning, hey, there are all these amazing things that we're talking about strategically on a PowerPoint, how they're going to turn into a P&L for us that we can actually take it to bank, right? Because ideas that live in PowerPoint dies in PowerPoint, never see a daylight, right? Because nobody knew how to execute them. And marketing could be the arm to do that. So one way to think about is we have a tremendous responsibility to understand the customer segmentation, to understand the user base, to understand how do you fluctuate certain things in your business segment or even in your product and branding segment to get there. And while you do that PowerPoint to P&L journey, you can also start thinking about the strategic intent that you have through your product and portfolio to your economical model, right? So I, like in my past, I was able to break down a marketing is generally X amount of new customer, but think about it this way. What marketing is generally generating is a new and repeat user at much faster rate than any other way you can achieve that, right? So you can say you could have a sales model that is 20% more than it's today to be able to do certain things, while marketing can generate the similar type of new customer or repeat customer at much lower expense comparatively, but also more repeatable process because you have a standards and systems that you can work through, right?
Hmm.
Compared to if you have 300 account executives or BDRs doing certain things, they're always going to do it differently for them. Even if you standardize, they're always going to have their own version of doing it. While you can run a very, very well organized campaign that could do the same thing by email marketing along with follow-up calls, along with follow-up, some sort of in-person meeting or what that could have much higher return at much lower cost position, and
Hmm.
also close rate would be significantly higher. So I can show that my close rate is exponentially higher than other channels in doing business. So you can marketing, in my opinion, is a new math that we can use it from P&L journey to really showcase how we can grow, and also the economical model that by investing X%, how are you actually unlocking the growth that come in. And generally people only talk about growth for the first year, which is good, but I do a modeling that shows year 2, 3, and 4 to say even when we retain X% more, this is the incoming revenue that we already generated that comes. That's lifetime value of a customer, right? We all
Hmm.
know about lifetime value of customer, but what is that value from marketing standpoint? And how are you generating that longer lifetime value that is constant? It's like annuity paying year after year. So thinking through on more of your best friend as a CMO, my most conversations are with my CFO, more so even than my chief revenue officer also, because on the CFO side I can explain the cost structure and the benefit structure of the marketing and the lowest point of acquisition cost that we can create in a whole process.
I'd like to go into that meeting with you with the CFO just for a minute and talk about the PowerPoint to P&L, but from a very specific lens. One of the biggest challenges that I hear from marketing leaders is talking about ROI with timelines. Because when you are creating a message and you have campaigns, there are certainly wins early on, but most happens as you build your brand in the eyes and the minds and the hearts of your target audience, and it takes
Mhm.
time. So when you think about these models, when you're having conversations with the CFO, are you saying, hey, this campaign by this date, here's the expectations as the first value creation with an impact on P&L, and then here's the projections beyond. Am I understanding it right?
Yeah, so the way I built it is I look at it from increments. So I also work with our agencies that provide that support, right, on either Google, Bing, AI models or whatnot. But what we create is instead of just saying give me X% for Y% or whatnot, we create it in terms of a 10, 15, 25, and 50% increments and which each increment model might look like. And from based on that, I'll look at historical values of last 5, 10 years to say what is my averages look like in my each campaign versus picking a absolute number. So based on averages, then you can say, hey, for 10% more or 50% more, these are the expected values that we have. And then what I do is I never go for 50% on month one. I say, let's start with 15, 1 5, and
Hmm.
measure and compare and stay with that percentage for maybe 2, 3 months to see if you're really gaining that momentum. And if you're not, look into where your leads or your appointments are coming from. Look at who are the ones that have the better conversion rate to a customer and I built model that not look at cost per click, but more likely cost per acquisition per customer. So clicks is a one thing, and I measure them, right? We have a 5% click through rate versus 2.2 industry standard. But at the same time, how many of those clicks are actually converting into an opportunity into a Salesforce in CRM environment, and how many of those opportunities are actually converting into a actual paying customer, and how many of those marketing created customers are actually long-term customers.
Mm.
So I built 3, 4 different stages of the modeling, and then we repeat and rinse and repeat and slowly increase to the next level and modify and say, okay, if any of the assumptions are not true. In modeling anything we do, Adam, you have to be very careful when you model. You don't want to have more than one ingredient change at one time. If you change too many things, you will never figure out which one is causing, right? So
Hmm.
if you have 5 or 6 things you are playing with, start with one at a time to see which one gets more and then adjust it appropriately and as you fine tune it, and that will give you a baseline of each of those ingredients that you can change in your strategy. It could be anything, it could be Google versus YouTube in one sense versus white paper versus actual customer testimonials. If those are 4 or 5 key influencers you have to kind of change it one at a time to see where your value is actually coming from.
Fascinating. And I want to talk about one of those, I think you call them ingredients. I may just steal that going forward. Variables versus ingredients. But we talked about that you have more audiences in B2B. We talked about the decision-making cycle is longer and different. Um, what about on the content creation side? Now, in the B2C, when I speak to CMOs, I often find a conversation goes into how do we create as quickly as possible as many versions of ads that are as personalized as possible to measure clearly the return on the investment for the funnel where we're focused. In B2B, it seems that the conversation isn't as clear or as direct because now unless a B2B where you are trying to get to the consumer per your Intel example. I'm talking about the B2B where you're focused on the layers. They're
Mhm.
distributors and these are folks in the world of business where your understanding of what is painful and important in their world must be considerably different than B2C. So what's your view on the importance of content creation as we compare B2B versus B2C?
No, I think that's a good observation on the content creation side is to really understanding the layers in like give you one example on my past life is in a building product situation, people are so focused on creating content for your dealer and distributor, and it was all about, hey, these are the features, this is how the product performs, these are the benefits to you as a dealer or distributor. What we found is one of the influencing channel was the main decision maker when you boil everything down, and it was installer that goes on a job site because at the end of the day, he or she can make or break your business if you are not really providing a product. So simple things as all your screws should have the same head. Don't let them don't make them change their
Tools.
bits and tools all the time. Simple thing. Second thing, reduce the number of joints that you're going to have in an installation process. Don't make them go through and weld more things or do more stuff. So you can simplify as an installation in a way. And then the message came as a more simplified installation message came as a one more product a day, meaning as a dealer, you can install one more product a day. As an installer, you can install one more product a day, but as a dealer, now you have productivity gain. Instead of if you're making $1,000 product on a day, right? And if you're doing six products in a day, as an example, now you can make $7,000 versus $6,000. That's significant gain to you as a distributor from the content standpoint. But to the installer, he or she is now married to your product. They know they're going to go back to something else. Even if they're forced on them, right? It's going to be slow to install. So dealer will never turn in a profit from them doing it over time, and their experience going to weaken in the process. So you have to think it that way. Other thing you have to think about is loyalty programs that you can build that actually benefit the people selling your product. Right. So now we talked about install earlier. Now you say, hey, my loyalty program is built on distributor salespeople, not for a dealer or a distributor, but they're salespeople. Why? Because as a sales manager, I might have a three different product that I can sell it to. But if you say, hey, all programs, all products is my message to you. So the more different product and the more my products you sell, you can gain loyalty points over time that will benefit you from, all kind of different things you can do. Either you go on a vacation, you can buy a iPad for your daughter, or you can buy, whatever, uh, the tools and things that you need to do your work. But over time, it can build up in their mind. So instead of always selling brand A because they are so used to of doing just copy paste in the coding system, now you have changing their behavior to say, hey, maybe give my brand a chance. So that's where you can influence. It's not necessarily creating content for that team, but creating an initiative for that team to change their mind on something they are so used to of doing exactly the same way done before. You can do the same thing with architects and specifiers because they are also creatures of habit, right? They copy paste when it comes to specification and stuff like that for B2B. You can provide them an updated content. It could be as simple as just, you know, download this online. Here is a QR code. You can scan it to and download in your thing. Or here is your Revit model. You can drag and drop. Yeah, so content could be simplified for them to say, hey, all you have to do is just drag and drop in your drawings, nothing else. It will do it all for you, right? So there are multiple segments or channels you can use on content that's not necessarily just a content in a clear sense. We think about marketing content, but more so about touching those ingredients in the process to make it more flavorful for them.
Thinking about the ingredients and the dish being my podcast, I am now considering if I should focus on B2B because it's so nuanced, especially in the context of this conversation. But Daniel, my last, and I feel like I can keep going on and on with you, but my last question is touching on AI. I don't think today we can discuss unlocking growth without AI. What's your take on where you are now as an organization and as a leader? Are you already sprinting and have all kinds of tools and processes and you're transformed? Are you starting the journey? Are you considering starting the journey? I find leaders are across the spectrum in this middle of 2024. So where are you at?
Yeah, so from purely just marketing perspective, we are using a couple of tools outside from the AI on content creation and stuff. But what we found is you still want to have some human touch when you're creating content and whatnot. What AI has done for us in on the content and just pure marketing side is the speed to market, has improved significantly by having a more clarified brand voices that you can kind of upload so that it learns over time, and also providing certain templates that it can work from. It just helps you significantly cut your cost and also your time, not necessarily creativity. So you still want to have people to kind of work through that process. And on a business side, Einstein and stuff like that that's built into Salesforce can give you significant insights on answering customer behavior questions. That's also AI that helps marketing side, because now if I can learn that certain segment of customers behave differently in a points that we never thought about, that can help you unlock a different way of marketing a product strategy, or unlock a totally new segment of product that you can offer, because the customers are behaving differently in different segments that AI is unlocking for you at a speed that you probably need 3, 4, 5 analysts to do. AI can do it on the go, right? And companies are embracing that kind of stuff, right? From the predictive marketing or forecasting and different things that you can work on.
I was on a plane last week and I was exposed to synthetic market research. And I was like, synthetic? What are you talking about? And by the time I finished the podcast and then I ran home to the computer and I started playing with it, apparently you can now create personas
Mm-hmm.
with some real inputs filled synthetically that have an incredibly accurate now you can't fully rely on it. We understand their limitations. We need the brilliant minds of our team members to oversee it, understand its limitation, and yield it in the way we yield all other tools, from Excel to PowerPoint to search engines. uh, Daniel, just a humongous thank you for taking the time to join and share your brilliance. I feel like you're leaving quite a mark on the podcast as I contemplate pivoting my focus. So thank you for this.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Adam, for giving me a chance. And it was great. Like I said, we all learn from each other in a process, and hey, we all get smarter by just talking to each other and learning from each other.
Let's get smarter. Over and out, Daniel.
Thank you.